Darkness.
Not the soft kind that comes with nightfall.
The suffocating kind.
The kind that presses against your eyes even when they are open. The kind that steals air from your lungs and replaces it with panic. Inside the box, she could not tell if it had been minutes or hours. The wedding dress was never meant for this. Ivory silk clung to her damp skin. The beaded bodice dug into her ribs every time she inhaled. The layers of tulle bunched beneath her thighs, trapping heat, trapping sweat, trapping fear.
She shifted slightly. The wood scraped her shoulder.
Splinters bit into her back. There was barely space to move. Barely space to breathe.
Her lungs burned.
Each inhale felt smaller than the last. The air inside the crate tasted like dust and raw timber.
Like confinement.
Like regret.
Outside. Footsteps. Heavy ones. Boots against concrete. Voices. Muffled. Male. She froze.
Her heartbeat pounded so violently she was certain they could hear it through the wood. Please, please keep walking. The crate jerked suddenly. She bit back a scream. It was being moved. Lifted. Tilted. Her body rolled awkwardly against the unforgiving planks. The wedding skirt twisted around her legs like a net. Her head hit the side with a dull thud. She swallowed a cry. If they heard her. No. She could not think like that. Anything was better than going back. Anything. The crate dropped with a heavy thump. Silence. Then metal scraping. A crowbar. Wood splintering. Her breath stopped. Light pierced through a thin crack above her face. A blade of white against endless black. The crack widened. Dust rained down over her cheeks. And then the lid ripped open. Blinding light flooded the crate. She squeezed her eyes shut, instinctively throwing her arm over her face. After hours in darkness, the brightness felt violent. When she forced her eyes open, a shadow blocked the sky. Tall. Broad. Still. The light framed him from behind, outlining powerful shoulders beneath a tailored black coat. His posture was effortless, but there was nothing casual about him. He was not confused. He was not amused. He was assessing. Slowly, deliberately, he stepped closer. The light shifted, and she saw his face. Sharp jaw. Controlled expression. Eyes so cold they looked carved from steel. He stared down at her as if she were a problem someone else had left on his doorstep. Or worse. A trap. Behind him, security guards tightened their formation. Hands near holsters. Waiting. The man's voice was deep. Calm. Controlled. Why is there a bride in my shipment? The words did not sound shocked. They sounded irritated. Like a scheduling error. Like misplaced inventory. She tried to sit up. The dress tangled around her knees. Her hands slipped against the wood. She coughed as fresh air rushed into her lungs too quickly. The sudden oxygen made her dizzy. Disoriented. She must have looked insane. A full wedding gown. Hair disheveled. Gold beads from her braids scattered across her shoulders. Mascara streaked faintly beneath her eyes. Cargo. She scrambled backward instinctively, pressing herself into the corner of the crate as if wood could protect her. Security stepped closer. The towering man did not move. He simply watched. Measured. Evaluated. She forced her voice to work. Please. It came out hoarse. Raw. Barely audible. Please do not send me back. Something flickered in his eyes. Not softness. Not yet. Recognition. Fear. Real fear. He tilted his head slightly. Who are you running from? The question hung between them. Not loud. But heavy. Ownership already laced through the air. She opened her mouth. No sound came out. How did she explain being sold? How did she explain vows she never wanted to speak? How did she explain that somewhere out there, a man twice her age believed she belonged to him? The billionaire's gaze sharpened. Then his expression shifted. Just slightly. If someone is looking for you, he said evenly, they will come here. A warning. Not for her. For them. The weight of that statement settled into the air like a promise of war. She did not know whether to feel protected or trapped again. His eyes never left hers. And for a moment, just a moment, it felt like the walls of the crate had only been replaced by something bigger. Stronger. More dangerous. The wind moved through the open warehouse behind him. Security waited for his order. She waited for her fate. And just before he spoke again, we pause. Because to understand how a bride ends up smuggled into a billionaire's private shipment, you have to go back. 6 hours earlier. To a wedding she was never meant to survive. And the moment she decided she would rather disappear than belong to a monster. 6 hours earlier. The mirror in her bedroom was cracked down the center. A thin fracture running from top to bottom, splitting her reflection into two uneven halves. She stood there for a long time, staring at herself as if the girl in the glass might offer a way out.
She did not.
The white dress hung from her shoulders like something borrowed from another life.
Ivory silk. Hand-stitched lace.
Tiny beads sewn across the bodice that shimmered every time she shifted under the weak morning light.
It was beautiful. Painfully beautiful. And it felt like chains.
The corset pulled tight around her ribs, squeezing the air from her lungs in slow, polite suffocation. The skirt flared out around her feet in soft waves of tulle that whispered every time she moved.
A princess dress. For a transaction.
She lifted her chin slightly. 21 years old. Top of her class in secondary school. Scholarship offers she never got to answer.
Quiet. Observant.
Strong in ways that did not need to be loud. Her father used to say she had steel in her spine.
Her father.
The thought pressed against her chest harder than the corset ever could. He had died 2 years ago.
Heart failure.
That is what they called it. But everyone in town knew what really killed him.
Debt.
Medical bills stacked like bricks around his hospital bed. Loans taken in desperation. Interest compounding faster than hope. And when he died, the numbers did not disappear. They simply shifted.
Onto her. Onto her mother. Onto this morning.
Downstairs, heels clicked sharply against the tile floor. Her mother was already dressed. Lavender suit. Gold earrings.
New shoes. All paid for. By him.
A knock hit the bedroom door without waiting for permission.
Are you ready?
Her mother's voice called, crisp and controlled.
She swallowed. Yes. The door opened anyway.
Her mother stepped inside, eyes scanning the room before landing on her daughter. There was no softness there.
Only calculation.
You look expensive, her mother said flatly. She did not know how to respond to that. Her mother stepped closer and adjusted the veil with brisk fingers. You will smile today, she continued. You will not embarrass me. I do not want to do this, she whispered before she could stop herself.
The words slipped out fragile. Dangerous.
Her mother's hands stilled. Silence filled the room like smoke.
You do not want to?
Her mother repeated slowly.
No.
Her mother's expression hardened. You agreed when you ate his food.
Silence.
When you wore the clothes he bought.
Silence.
When you lived in the house he paid to keep. The words came sharper now. You agreed when your father left us drowning and he offered a rope.
Her throat tightened.
Is that what I am? She asked quietly.
A payment?
Her mother did not flinch. You are a solution.
There it was. Not daughter. Not child. Not flesh and blood. Solution.
You owe us, her mother added. The words settled into her bones.
You owe us.
As if love came with invoices. As if being born had signed a contract she never saw. Outside, car horns echoed faintly. The groom's convoy had arrived.
Her stomach dropped.
The church was already full when they arrived. Whispers traveled like wind through tall grass.
People stared. Some envious. Some pitying.
Most pretending not to understand. At the altar stood Cornelius Webb. 63 years old. Expensive gray suit tailored to hide the softness age had left behind. Gold watch heavy on his wrist. Thinning hair slicked back carefully. His smile stretched too wide when he saw her.
Hungry. Possessive. Victorious.
He had already paid the bride price. He had already signed the documents.
To him, this was a collection.
She walked down the aisle on trembling legs. Each step felt like sinking deeper into wet cement. The music sounded distant.
Muted. Like it was underwater.
When she reached him, he extended his hand. She placed hers in it. His grip tightened immediately.
Too tight.
The officiant began speaking. Words about unity.
Commitment. Honor.
She did not hear them. All she felt was the pressure of his fingers digging into her skin. When it was time for vows, he leaned closer.
Too close.
His breath brushed against her ear. You belong to me now, he whispered. The words were not romantic.
They were a claim.
His fingers squeezed her wrist hard enough to hurt.
Pain shot up her arm.
And something inside her snapped. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Quietly. Like a thread pulled too tight finally giving way. She saw her future in a single flash.
A locked house. A silenced voice.
A body that did not belong to her anymore. And suddenly she could not breathe. Not from the corset. From the truth. She pulled her hand back. The movement startled him. The church murmured. Her mother's eyes widened in warning. Continue, the officiant prompted gently. She stepped back instead. One step. Then another. Cornelius frowned. Come here, he ordered under his breath. No. She turned. And she ran. Gasps erupted behind her. Her mother shouted her name. Cornelius cursed. But she was already halfway down the aisle, lifting her dress with both hands as she pushed through the church doors into blinding daylight. She did not stop. Not when her veil tore free. Not when her shoes slipped off on the pavement. Not when someone yelled, "Catch her." Barefoot now. Streets burning beneath her soles. White dress flashing like a signal flare as she sprinted through the marketplace. People stared. Pointed. But no one stopped her. She ran until the town thinned into warehouses and salt air. The dockyard. Massive cargo containers stacked like silent giants. Workers shouting. Engines roaring. Ships preparing to depart. She ducked behind a stack of crates, chest heaving. Voices echoed in the distance. They went this way. They were close. Too close. Her eyes scanned frantically. One crate sat open, lid resting against its side. No time to think. She climbed in. Pulled the heavy lid down with shaking hands. Darkness swallowed her whole. The smell of raw wood and dust filled her nose. Her breathing came too fast. Too loud. Outside, footsteps thundered past. Voices cursed. Then faded. She stayed still. Minutes passed. Or maybe seconds. She could not tell. Then the crate shifted. Lifted. Her stomach dropped. Wait. Wait. She had not thought about where it was going. The crate tilted as machinery moved it. Her body rolled awkwardly against the wooden walls. Then a loud thump. Set down. Silence. And then hammering. Nails being driven into place. Her eyes widened in the dark. They were sealing it. Sealing her in. No, she whispered, but no one heard. More hammering. Final. Permanent. Outside, a man's voice said casually, "This shipment goes to Kingston Holdings." Her blood ran cold. Kingston. She did not know who that was. But she knew one thing. She was no longer in control of where her life was headed. And as the crate was lifted again and carried away, her breathing slowed into the kind of fear that does not scream. It waits. Because somewhere ahead, a lid was going to open. And whoever stood on the other side of it would decide whether she had escaped one cage. Or entered another. The crate landed with a heavy, echoing thud. Not on concrete this time. On polished stone. The air was different here. Cooler. Controlled. Conditioned. Somewhere in the distance, a fountain trickled with artificial precision. The faint hum of hidden ventilation systems whispered through high ceilings. This was not a dockyard. This was power. Open it. The voice cut through the space like a command carved in steel. Measured. Deep. Used to obedience. Crowbars wedged beneath nailed wood. Splinters snapped. Metal screeched. The lid tore free. Light flooded in. And there she was. Curled in ivory silk. Breathing like prey. For a moment, no one moved. Security men, 3 of them, shifted subtly, forming a silent triangle around the crate. Hands rested near concealed weapons. Eyes scanning. Because this house did not allow surprises. And yet, there was a bride in the cargo. He stepped forward. Gray Kingston did not rush. He never rushed. Early 30s. Self-made billionaire. Built an empire before most men finished finding themselves. Every deal calculated. Every move precise. Control was not a preference for him. It was oxygen. He wore a charcoal suit without a single crease. No tie. Top button undone. Effortlessly composed. His eyes were colder than the marble beneath his shoes. He looked down into the crate. And his expression did not change. "Why," he said calmly, "is there a bride in my shipment?" No shock. No amusement. Only assessment. She pushed herself upright, the wedding dress tangling around her legs. Her braids were half loose now, gold beads scattered across her shoulders. Sweat glistened along her hairline. She looked young. Too young. And terrified. Gray's mind moved fast. This could be a setup. A distraction. A lawsuit trap. A gold digger's desperate stunt. A rival's blackmail attempt. He did not build Kingston Holdings by believing in coincidences. Security stepped closer. She scrambled backward instinctively, her back pressing against the crate wall. "Please," she croaked, voice raw from dust and fear. "Don't send me back." Back. Interesting word. Gray tilted his head slightly. "Who sent you?" "No one." "Wrong answer." "I sent myself." A flicker of irritation passed through him. "You sent yourself. In a wedding dress. Into secured cargo. Delivered to my private estate." Her lips trembled, but she did not look away. "I was getting married today," she said. Security exchanged glances. Gray remained still. And I ran. The word hung there. Unpolished. Ugly. Honest. He crossed his arms slowly. "To? Away. That is not a destination." "I did not care where it went," she whispered. "I just needed it to not be there." There it was again. Not dramatics. Not seduction. Desperation. But Gray had seen desperate women before. Desperate could still be manipulative. He nodded slightly toward security. "Remove her." 2 men stepped forward. She reacted instantly. Not with elegance. Not with pride. With panic. She lunged forward and grabbed his sleeve. The movement was reckless. Stupid. Security stiffened. Gray's jaw tightened. "Please," she said, fingers gripping the expensive fabric like it was the last solid thing in her world. "I will work. I will clean. I will sleep on the floor. I will disappear. Just do not send me back." Her hands were shaking. Not theatrically. Uncontrollably. Gray looked down at where she touched him. Then back at her face. Tears welled but did not fall. That detail mattered. She was not performing. She was surviving. Security waited for the signal. Gray opened his mouth to give it. And paused. He saw something in her eyes. Not calculation. Not ambition. Fear. Pure. Animal. Fear. And against his will, he hesitated. The silence stretched. Even he noticed it. He did not hesitate. Not in boardrooms. Not in negotiations. Not in anything. Yet here he was. Standing over a runaway bride in a wooden crate. And thinking. The sound of a cane tapping against marble echoed from the hallway behind him. Soft. Rhythmic. Authority of a different kind. Gray. He did not turn immediately. He already knew the voice. Odessa Kingston. His grandmother. The only person in this house who did not request permission to speak. She stepped into the warehouse wing slowly, silver hair wrapped elegantly at the nape of her neck, eyes sharper than most men half her age. She took in the scene in one sweep. Security. The crate. The bride. The fear. Then she looked at Gray. "What have you brought home now?" "I did not bring anything," he replied evenly. She smuggled herself. Odessa moved closer. Not rushed. Not alarmed. She peered down into the crate. And the bride's composure cracked. Something about older women. Something about softness. Her shoulders trembled. Odessa saw it. She did not ask for explanations. She did not demand facts. She simply said, "She stays." Gray exhaled sharply through his nose. No. Yes. She could be. She is not. You do not know that. Odessa straightened. I know fear when I see it. Their eyes locked. This was not a discussion about a guest. This was about control. And Gray did not surrender control easily. 1 week, he said finally. Security shifted subtly in surprise. 1 week, he repeated. She stays. Under supervision. Odessa nodded once. The matter in her mind was closed. Gray turned back to the bride. 1 week, he said coolly. You lie to me, you leave. You steal, you leave. You cause problems, you leave. She nodded quickly. Relief flooding her face so suddenly it almost hurt to look at. Thank you, she breathed. He did not respond. He stepped away. But as he walked toward the glass doors leading into the main house, he felt it. A disturbance. Like a variable introduced into a perfectly balanced equation. And Gray Kingston hated variables. That night, the mansion was quiet. Too quiet. The estate operated like a precision instrument. Lights dimmed automatically. Staff rotated silently. Security monitored every perimeter. Gray stood in his private office overlooking the east lawn. Screens glowed across one wall. Live camera feeds. Driveway. Gate. Hallways. Guest wing. He did not usually watch.
He delegated. But tonight he watched. A knock sounded.
His head of security entered.
Sir. What?
There are men asking questions in town. Gray did not look away from the screens. What kind of questions? About a missing bride.
There it was. He felt it settle. Heavy. Description, he asked. Matches her. Silence.
On one of the screens, she appeared.
Guest bedroom.
Sitting on the edge of the bed. Still in the wedding dress.
Shoes off. Veil discarded.
Her shoulders shook silently.
No audience. No performance.
Just quiet crying into her hands. Gray's expression hardened. The security chief continued carefully. They are offering money.
For? Information.
Gray's jaw flexed. He zoomed the camera feed slightly.
Not enough to invade. Just enough to confirm.
She was small in that oversized bed.
Lost. Alone.
His eyes shifted toward the live feed of the front gate.
Then back to her.
If someone is looking for you, he had said earlier, they will come here. He had not meant it as protection. But now it sounded like one. His voice lowered.
Cold. Decisive.
They will not touch what is under my roof. The words were not loud. They did not need to be. The security chief nodded once and exited. Gray remained standing there.
Watching. Not because he trusted her. Not yet.
But because something about this felt personal. And he did not like that. Down the hall, she wiped her tears and lay back stiffly on the bed, staring at the ceiling like someone waiting for the next blow. She had escaped one cage. But she did not know yet whether she had entered another. And neither did he. But one thing was certain. Men were coming. And Gray Kingston did not share what stood on his property.
Not his land. Not his power.
And certainly not his bride in a box. The first morning inside the Kingston estate felt unreal.
Not peaceful. Not safe. Controlled.
The kind of silence that was not empty. It was engineered. The guest room curtains opened automatically at 7. Soft light spilled across polished hardwood floors. Somewhere beyond the glass, gardeners moved in precise lines, trimming hedges that were already perfect. She sat upright in the massive bed, still wearing the oversized t-shirt one of the maids had quietly offered her the night before. The wedding dress was gone.
Folded. Removed.
Like the life it represented. But the weight of it lingered on her shoulders anyway. She did not belong here.
And she knew it.
So she did the only thing she had ever known how to do when she felt powerless. She made herself useful. By mid-morning, she had found the kitchen. It was larger than her entire childhood home. Steel appliances gleamed under soft lighting. The staff moved with quiet efficiency.
No shouting. No chaos.
No wasted motion. She stepped inside hesitantly.
I can help, she offered.
The head housekeeper blinked in confusion.
You're a guest.
I'm not, she replied gently.
I'm temporary. The woman hesitated. Then handed her a towel.
That was how it started. Drying dishes.
Wiping counters.
Peeling vegetables with careful precision.
She did not complain.
Did not ask for special treatment. Did not touch what was not offered.
Upstairs, Gray watched.
His office lights were dimmed, multiple security feeds illuminating one wall in cool blue tones. He told himself he was monitoring risk.
Not her.
But the camera feed remained fixed longer than necessary. She worked quietly. Refused the chef's attempt to seat her for breakfast. Refused fresh fruit brought specifically for her. Chose instead to drink water at the sink. He leaned back in his chair. Gold diggers did not turn down imported strawberries.
They did not scrub countertops. They did not flinch. He paused the footage. Rewound. Played again.
A tray slipped from a junior maid's hands in the background. It shattered against tile. She jerked violently. Not startled. Panicked. Her hand flew instinctively to shield her head.
Gray's jaw tightened.
That was not manipulation. That was conditioning. In the afternoons, she sat with Odessa in the sunroom.
Tea. Checkers. Conversation.
Odessa asked questions gently.
Not interrogations. Invitations. You read?
Odessa asked one day.
Yes. What? Anything I can find.
Odessa smiled faintly. Gray passed through once, unannounced. He paused when he heard laughter.
Hers. Soft. Unexpected.
He had not heard that sound before.
She looked up.
Their eyes met. And just as quickly, she looked away.
Avoided him. Always.
That irritated him more than open hostility would have. 3 days passed like that.
Quiet. Orderly.
But tension does not disappear just because no one speaks it aloud.
It accumulates. And on the 4th night, he cornered her.
The hallway outside the east wing was narrow compared to the rest of the estate.
Dimly lit.
Intimate in a way the mansion rarely allowed. She turned the corner too quickly. And nearly collided into his chest.
He did not step back. Neither did she.
You expect me to believe, he said evenly, that you jumped into a random crate without knowing where it was going?
Yes. No hesitation.
His eyes narrowed. You're either brave or stupid.
She lifted her chin. Or desperate. Silence. Thick. Charged.
The kind that shifts the oxygen in a room.
He stepped closer. Not touching.
But close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. Close enough that her breath hitched despite herself.
You don't look stupid, he murmured. Her pulse fluttered. I'm not.
Then you calculated something. I calculated survival.
That landed.
For a fraction of a second, something unreadable moved through his expression. You expect me to believe you had no idea where you'd end up?
I didn't care, she whispered.
His gaze dropped briefly to her bare feet against the marble. Still refusing the slippers provided. Still refusing comfort.
You should, he said softly. Care. She did not respond.
But she did not look away either. Electric tension coiled between them.
And then footsteps approached. Security. The moment fractured. He stepped back first. Control restored.
For your sake, he said quietly, I hope you're telling the truth.
And he walked away.
Leaving her standing there.
Shaken.
Angry. And confused by the way her heart refused to calm down. Outside the estate walls, the world was less controlled.
Money talked. And her groom had plenty of it.
Flyers circulated discreetly. A photograph from the engagement ceremony. Reward offered for information.
Rumors spread fast. She ran. She dishonored him. She belongs to him. The words traveled. Eventually, they reached the Kingston Gate. Security doubled. Patrol routes tightened.
And one evening, as she carried folded linens down the corridor near Gray's office, she heard it.
His voice. Low. Measured.
If they step on my property, he said, they won't leave.
Her steps froze.
The words echoed in her chest.
Not leave.
Was that protection?
Or possession? Her stomach twisted.
Because she had escaped ownership once. She could not survive it again. That night, she went looking for him.
Not as a guest. Not as a servant. As herself.
She found him in the West Study, reviewing contracts under soft lamplight. He did not look up when she entered.
You don't knock? He asked calmly.
I needed to say something.
Now he looked at her. What?
Her hands trembled slightly.
But she did not hide it. You don't own me. The words hung there. Brave. Dangerous. His gaze sharpened. He stood slowly.
Measured steps closed the distance between them. I don't let people take what's in my house, he said. The line lingered.
Heavy.
Layered.
Not what's mine. What's in my house. She swallowed.
That doesn't make me yours.
Silence. Close now. Too close.
His voice dropped lower. You're under my protection. I didn't ask for that.
No, he agreed softly.
You ran into it.
Her breath caught. He wasn't shouting.
That made it worse. Protection, she said carefully, shouldn't feel like another cage.
For a moment, he looked almost offended. Then controlled again. You're free to leave, he said.
They both knew that wasn't true. Not with men searching. Not with money offered.
Not with pride wounded. Her jaw tightened.
You sound exactly like him. The comparison hit. His expression went cold instantly.
Be careful. With what? She shot back. The truth?
The tension between them was no longer subtle.
It was combustible.
And neither of them stepped back. The security alert came through minutes later.
Sharp beep. Brief. Controlled panic.
Gray's phone vibrated in his hand. He answered without breaking eye contact.
Yes. Pause.
His eyes shifted slightly toward the window overlooking the front drive.
Understood. He ended the call. And walked to the glass.
She followed instinctively. Past the gates, a black luxury sedan idled.
Familiar. Even at a distance.
Her blood ran cold. Cornelius Webb stepped out. 63 years old. Suit immaculate. Rage visible even from here. He looked smaller behind those gates. But no less dangerous.
Gray's voice was calm. Almost bored.
Is that him?
Her throat tightened. Yes.
Security moved swiftly into position. Guards flanking the gate. Engines ready.
Protocols activating.
Cornelius looked up toward the mansion as if he could sense her watching.
His mouth moved.
She could not hear the words.
But she knew them. Come home.
Gray turned slightly toward her.
No mockery. No irritation. Just calculation.
Well, he said quietly, it seems someone is looking for you. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears. Outside, Cornelius raised his hand. And pointed directly toward the house. As if he could see through walls. As if he already believed she was his. The gates remained closed. But tension pressed against them like a storm about to break. Inside the mansion, two predators now stood on opposite sides. One claiming ownership through money. The other through protection.
And she was caught between them. The car engine roared.
Security shifted. Gray's jaw flexed. And as Cornelius took a step closer to the gates, the camera feed zoomed in automatically.
The war had arrived.
Right at the doorstep.
The gates did not open.
They never did without permission. And Gray Kingston did not grant permission lightly. From the upper balcony overlooking the drive, he watched Cornelius Webb argue with security. The older man's gestures were sharp.
Demanding. Entitled. He pointed at the house. At the windows. At the gates.
As if ownership could be declared loudly enough to become true. Behind Gray, someone stood rigid.
Hands clenched. Breathing shallow.
The sight of that man caused a reaction.
Not longing. Not regret. Fear. Old, trained fear. Gray noticed.
He noticed everything. Bring me everything on Cornelius Webb, he said quietly into his phone.
Sir. Debt records.
Property transfers.
Marriage contracts.
Financial transactions in the last 3 months. Especially those involving that family.
A pause. Yes, sir. He ended the call.
Outside, Cornelius pulled out his phone now. Anger simmering. Gray turned back inside without another word. Someone followed instinctively. Because despite everything, the safer place right now was behind him. 2 hours later, the files arrived.
Digital. Precise. Brutal.
Gray sat at his desk in the private study, scrolling through documentation with increasing stillness.
Loan agreements. Interest extensions.
Medical bills transferred posthumously.
A father's signature. Then. A lump sum payment.
Transferred to a mother's account.
Memo line. Marriage settlement. His jaw tightened.
More documents surfaced. Premarital agreement drafts.
Property clauses.
Spousal obedience language buried in legal jargon.
And then.
The bride price receipt.
Signed. Stamped. Official. Legal on paper. Rotten in truth.
There was no exaggeration. No manipulation. This was a transaction. Gray leaned back slowly. The anger that rose inside him wasn't loud.
It was cold. Focused. Dangerous.
He had seen hostile takeovers before.
This was one.
Just with a life as the asset.
His phone buzzed again.
Background report complete. He opened the final file.
Cornelius Webb, 63. Widower.
2 prior marriages. The first ended quietly.
The second. Divorce filed by wife.
Claims of emotional coercion.
Settlement sealed. And then. A memory surfaced. A courtroom.
His mother sitting silently beside a man twice her age.
Her eyes hollow.
Her voice barely audible when she said, I do.
He had been 17.
Old enough to understand what was happening.
Too young to stop it.
The marriage was strategic. Financially beneficial.
Emotionally lethal.
She lasted 5 years.
Then illness. Then silence.
Then a funeral where no one mentioned how she had looked smaller each year inside that gilded cage. Gray closed his laptop slowly. History was not supposed to repeat itself inside his house.
And yet,
it had arrived in a wooden crate.
The intercom buzzed.
Sir, security said, voice tight. He's threatening to call the police.
Gray stood. Let him.
The gates remained closed. But now there were witnesses. 2 police vehicles parked outside. Officers speaking calmly with Cornelius.
Papers exchanged.
Cornelius gestured angrily toward the mansion. Inside, someone stood frozen in the foyer. Breathing uneven. They'll make me go.
Gray turned.
No one makes anyone do anything here. He has papers. So do I. A security officer approached discreetly. They're asking if the guest is here voluntarily. Gray didn't look away. Do you want to go? The entire foyer seemed to hold its breath. Security. Staff. Even the officers outside waiting for confirmation.
No.
It wasn't dramatic.
It wasn't loud. It was honest. Simple. Clear. He nodded once.
Then turned toward the door. Then no one is leaving.
The statement was quiet. Final.
He walked outside alone.
No raised voice.
No theatrics.
Just certainty.
Cornelius stiffened when Gray approached. You're harboring my wife, Cornelius snapped. Gray's expression didn't change.
She is not your wife.
We signed the documents. You signed a purchase agreement. Cornelius's face flushed. You have no authority in this matter. Gray smiled slightly.
Wrong move.
You're correct, he said smoothly.
I don't.
He pulled a folder from beneath his arm. But the anti-coercion statute does. Cornelius's confidence flickered. Gray continued calmly. The bride price receipt you filed? Technically illegal under subsection 12. A police officer glanced between them. Gray didn't raise his voice.
He didn't need to.
You also failed to disclose prior coercion allegations in your second marriage, which, if reopened, could complicate your financial standing significantly.
Cornelius's jaw tightened.
You think you can intimidate me? No, Gray replied evenly. I can bankrupt you.
Silence.
Wind moved through the iron gates. Cornelius's eyes burned with fury. She belongs to me. The words were spit like poison. Gray's tone dropped. No one is property.
A beat.
And if you attempt to force this matter further, I will ensure every business partner you have sees every document I now possess. Cornelius stared at him.
Calculating.
The police officers shifted uneasily. Gray stepped closer to the gate. Not aggressively.
Confidently.
You made a mistake, he said quietly. You chose the wrong house.
The tension snapped.
Cornelius stepped back.
Not defeated.
But outmaneuvered.
For now, he muttered. He turned toward his car. Paused.
And looked up at the mansion windows. His voice carried just enough to reach the gate. If I can't have control, he called coldly, no one will.
The engine roared. The car pulled away.
But threats don't leave with taillights. They linger. Gray stood there a moment longer.
Then turned.
Inside, someone was still standing exactly where he left them.
Eyes wide. Heart racing. He won't stop.
Gray met that gaze.
And for the first time,
his anger wasn't about business. It wasn't about control.
It was personal.
He can try. Outside the gates, the road emptied. But something had shifted. This was no longer about debt.
Or contracts. Or embarrassment. It was about pride. Possession. And wounded ego.
Cornelius Webb had just been publicly humiliated. Men like him didn't retreat quietly.
They retaliated.
And inside the Kingston estate, two people now understood something they hadn't before.
The war had begun.
And the next move would not be legal. Threats don't always announce themselves.
Sometimes. They wait.
3 days after Cornelius drove away from the gates of Kingston estate, the air felt deceptively calm.
Too calm.
Security had tightened patrol routes. Vehicles were tracked. Schedules adjusted. No one was allowed off the property alone.
But there was insistence.
I need to feel normal.
Normal.
The words sounded fragile. Gray studied the speaker across the breakfast table. You don't know what normal looks like right now. I can't hide forever.
It wasn't defiance. It was exhaustion.
After a long silence, he nodded once.
2 guards.
The compromise wasn't ideal. But it was accepted. The marketplace was busy. Voices layered over one another. Vendors shouted prices. Children ran between stalls. Music crackled from a distant radio. Careful steps moved between tables of fruit and fabric, breathing in air that didn't belong to climate-controlled hallways. For the first time in days, there was almost a sense of being human again. The guards kept a respectful distance.
Far enough to give space. Close enough to intervene.
A small stall selling woven bracelets. Fingers brushed across colorful threads.
Normal. Just for a second. And then, the van door slid open. Fast. Too fast. Two men stepped out. Caps pulled low. Purposeful.
One grabbed an arm.
Hard. A gasp.
The world shifted instantly. The marketplace noise dulled into chaos.
A hand clamped over a mouth. Kicking. Fighting.
The bracelet stand toppled, beads scattering across concrete like tiny alarms. The guards reacted. One shoved aside violently. The other restrained. It happened in seconds.
Planned. Calculated. Pulled toward the open van.
A heartbeat pounding violently.
Not again.
Teeth clamped down on the hand covering the mouth.
Hard. A curse.
Grip loosened slightly. A scream broke free.
And then, tires screeched.
A black SUV cut across the front of the van at an impossible angle. Door flung open before the vehicle fully stopped. Gray stepped out.
No hesitation. No shouting. No warning.
He moved with terrifying focus. One of the men lunged toward him. The confrontation was swift.
Efficient. Not wild. Not reckless. Controlled force. A fist connected. A body hit pavement.
The second man tried to force movement toward the van. But Gray was already there. A hand wrapped around the attacker's collar. Dragged him backward. The impact against metal echoed sharply. Security reinforcements arrived seconds later.
The van sped off empty.
The market had fallen silent.
People stared. Phones lifted.
Gray didn't care about witnesses.
He turned. Shaking. Not crying. Not screaming. Just shaking. He stepped closer. Are you hurt? No answer. He reached up carefully, checking for injury. And then, he pulled the trembling figure into him. Not possessive. Not claiming. Protective. One arm around the shoulders. The other steady at the back of the head. Shielding. The difference was immediate. Not tension. Not control. Safety. A grip tightened against his jacket. A body trembling. His voice lowered. No one touches you. Not romantic. A vow. The market noise slowly returned, but inside that moment. Stillness. He held on until the shaking slowed. Until breathing steadied. Until pulse evened out. And something inside him shifted. Fear had always been something removed from environments. Not something absorbed. Now, it was personal. Back at the estate, adrenaline faded. Leaving honesty. They stood in the study. Alone. No guards. No staff. Just silence. I don't want to be someone's possession again. The words weren't aimed at one man. They were aimed at fear itself. At history. At control disguised as protection. Gray stared. You're not. Not mine. Not anyone's. A pause. Tension softened slightly. He exhaled slowly. I don't let people close, he admitted. They always leave. A fracture line revealed. A step closer. Intentional. I didn't choose to come here. A beat. But I choose to stay. The difference mattered. Choice. Not transaction. Not debt. Not rescue. Choice. The space between them shifted. Not suspicion. Possibility. A hand lifted slowly. Enough time to step back. No movement away. Fingers brushed a cheek. Gentle. As if confirming reality. A hand rested over his wrist. Steady. And when he leaned down. Not dominance. Not hunger. Surrender. The kiss was slow. Measured. Careful. Two people who survived cages. Testing freedom together. Outside, estate lights flickered on as dusk settled across the grounds. Security intensified patrols. Cornelius Webb would hear about the failed attempt. And men like him did not accept humiliation twice. But inside the quiet study, walls had cracked. Defenses lowered. Not completely. Not yet. But enough. And beyond the gates, a black sedan parked briefly down the road. Watching. Waiting. Because this war wasn't finished. And something fragile had just made it more dangerous.